As the old saying goes, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Throughout history and even in the present times, the world has always had an abundance of politicians, kings, generals, and leaders who are really just kind of off their rockers. Whether it is because of the power that they wield that has driven them to skirt the edges of insanity, or that their eccentricities have been their most defining character since the beginning. They have played significant roles in shaping the world that we know of today for good or bad. So nowadays, we struggle to understand the motivations behind despots with trigger-happy fingers who could start a devastating nuclear war, or scratch our heads at world leaders who seem out of sync with the values of the countries they represent. But compared to the ones on this list, they may be lower on the insanity scale. Well, except for this guy. This guy is really crazy. So in today's video, we're gonna count down to 10 of history's most insane and ape-crazy leaders. Number 10, Joanna la Loca. What better way to start off this video than with someone who was actually called crazy by people during her reign. Joanna of Castile was the wife of Spain's King Philip I, who was also known as Philip the Handsome. Despite their marriage being an arranged one, Joanna fell deeply in love with her husband and became a devoted wife and mother to their children, and ruled as Queen of Castile and Aragon in the 16th century. Unfortunately for Joanna, she fell into a deep melancholy and depression after Philip's sudden death. Stories have it that she would often visit her husband's tomb in order to have it open so that she could spend the night with the deceased king, caressing and kissing his corpse. When her son Charles ascended the throne, Joanna was sent to a nunnery to live out the rest of her days in peace, where her caretakers would claim that the mad queen was convinced that the nuns were trying to kill her. Number 9, Charles VI. Crowned as King of France in the late 14th century and at the youthful age of 11, Charles VI earned the name Charles the Well-Loved by his subjects for being a good ruler, that is until insanity consumed him. Later on called Charles the Mad by the same people who loved him before, his madness grew worse as he aged. According to people in his court, Charles would fall to paranoia and agitation by just the sound of a dropping spear, especially when he was traveling. His madness became even worse when he was reported to have murdered one of his own knights and a few other people in his party. Charles's condition only worsened after waking up from a coma. Oftentimes, he would forget the names of his children and his wife. He would even forget his name and who he was. What punctuated his madness before his death in 1422 was him spending the remaining days of his life strongly believing that he was made completely out of glass. Number 8, Ibrahim I. Successor to Murad IV and one of the most famous sultans of the Ottoman Empire, Ibrahim I was not entirely the chosen successor. Actually, Murad IV even made an edict that Ibrahim should be killed upon his own death. Unfortunately, Ibrahim was allowed to live and rule because his subjects and even his rivals did not really see him as a threat due to his madness. It was this oversight that allowed Ibrahim I to bring the Ottoman Empire dangerously close to collapsing in a short amount of time. Ibrahim was known for his attraction to morbidly obese women and ordered his men to track down the largest woman they could find. Eventually, somewhere in Armenia or Georgia, they found the Sultan the perfect candidate who weighed over 300 pounds. Ibrahim was said to be pleased with this and called this woman his piece of sugar and gave her a government pension alongside the title of Governor General of Damascus. Now, to me, people are beautiful in all shapes and forms, and everybody has their own attributes they're attracted to. That's all fine. But what's crazy was that Ibrahim heard rumors that one of his concubines had been compromised, so he ordered the execution of 280 members of his harem by drowning them in the sea. Number 7, Fushun. An emperor of the Qin dynasty, he only sat on the throne for 2 years, but to his subjects, it was an extremely long and dangerous 2 years. His lunacy was underscored by his thirst for power and excessive amounts of drinking that, according to records, took place even when he was making important decisions on state matters. One of his first orders when he came into power was banning the use of words such as lacking, without, and devoid. And a simple slip of the tongue is enough to send anyone to the gallows. Government officials were not even spared his madness and bloodthirsty nature, because whenever Fushun felt like it, he ordered their deaths. Unfortunately for this emperor, his madness gained the ire of his family members, who took matters into their own hands and assassinated him. Number 6, Empress Anna. Made Empress of Russia in the 18th century, Anna ruled her vast empire with ferocity mixed with her brand of craziness. Upon officially taking the throne, Anna restored the secret police to do anything she wishes, since she was in full favor of the royal guard. For the 10 years of her rule, she was able to torment and execute the same aristocrats and nobility who had put her in power. Her madness became even more evident when, in one story, she discovered that a young Russian prince's mother was a Catholic, and upon the mother's death, the young prince was arranged to be married to one of Anna's maids. The act may seem harmless at first glance, except for the fact that Anna had ordered a palace made out of ice constructed especially for the occasion. Guests for the wedding were forced to come in clown costumes, and the ceremony took place in one of Russia's Russia's harshest and deadliest winters it has ever seen in years. Number 5. Nero. The Roman Empire has no shortage of insane despots, and Empire Nero is among the infamous, if not the most infamous, of unhinged emperors. His extreme hatred towards Christians is well noted in history, and the Great Fire of Rome was supposedly executed under his orders to clear out the city of Christians and make way for a new city center as well as a shiny new palace. I mean, the guy was so crazy and bloodthirsty, he even had his mother and wives killed. Number 4. Commodus. Son of the revered and loved Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius, Commodus was an apple that fell really far away from the tree. With an appetite for gladiator fights, Commodus proclaims that he was the incarnation of the mythical hero Hercules. Of course, with big shoes to fill after the death of his father, Commodus proved to be a failure as a leader in almost every possible way. Where Marcus Aurelius was praised for his intelligence and resolve, Commodus was absolutely despised by the people of Rome as well as his contemporaries. His vanity and display of manliness as well as his massive ego did not fare well for the empire that he was expected to lead. Instead, Commodus enjoyed jumping in the ring and participating in gladiator fights that were rigged to his favor. Number 3. Vlad the Impaler. History knows him well as Vlad Dracula, and of course he was the direct inspiration for Bram Stoker to pen his classic Victorian novel. Prince of Wallachia in Romania around the 15th century, Vlad was one of the fiercest opponents of the Ottoman Empire who at the time were encroaching upon Europe. His sadistic temperament earned him the nickname the Impaler by many of his foes because of a particular way he enjoyed disposing his enemies and critics. In fact, dozens of legends surround the persona of Vlad Dracula. It was believed that he had his own forest of impaled people where he would occasionally dine, drinking their blood in a golden cup and dipping his bread in it. A story that perhaps originated the belief that he was a vampire himself. In another story, when disease broke out and infected hundreds in his kingdom, Vlad invited the diseased as well as the impoverished to a banquet. In the middle of the feast, the prince quietly exited the banquet hall and ordered his men to board the premise up and barricade all exits as soldiers set the palace ablaze. This was a way for him to clean his streets of the plague-ridden as well as the poor. Number 2. Ivan the Terrible. Ivan IV was among a long line of Russian czars that brought stability to an otherwise chaotic country in dark times. However, despite being a strong-willed monarch, Ivan was prone to violent outbursts of anger and madness. After falling to a deep depression when his wife died in 1560, his paranoia and lunacy got worse. He ruled Russia for the next 24 years. His enemies and critics met brutal ends under his rule, and the common people of Russia lived in genuine terror due to the Tsar's indiscriminate use of violence and torture to get his way. Not even his bloodline managed to survive his madness. In one historical account, Ivan had gotten angry at his eldest son. Believing that he was being disrespected, he beat his son with a 30-pound iron bar, crushing his skull and killing him instantly. Finally, number 1. Caligula. In the 4 years of his rule, Caligula brought blood and carnage throughout the Roman Empire. Crowned as emperor in 37 AD, the Roman public thought that they were out of the shadows after the death of the equally demented emperor Tiberius. For the first 6 months of his reign, Caligula could not seem to be more popular. After freeing prisoners who were unjustly caged by Tiberius and introducing revolutionary reforms in government and society, things seemed to be pretty promising. That is, until he fell terribly ill. Upon his recovery in October of the same year, his mind began to warp. He began declaring himself as a living god and ordered the construction of a bridge from his palace that directly led to the temple of Jupiter so that he may consult with the deities. He began cross-dressing and attempted to appoint his horse as a counsel to the Roman Senate. And then he tried to make his horse into a general of the Roman army. His detractors, political opponents, and critics faced harsh consequences for voicing their displeasure. Executions almost became part of daily life under his reign, up until he was assassinated by a group of guardsmen in January 24th, 41 AD. Like I said, all these guys seem really crazy, but I think nowadays Kim 3 Fat he's worse. Because I feel like the advantage that ancient people had back then was that if your emperor was crazy, if your ruler was pretty insane and not popular, he's gonna get killed. Either by people around him, or a revolution could happen, because back then, like a long time ago, there weren't really guns. I mean, everybody used swords and spears, and common people knew how to make those. But nowadays it's tough, right? Like in Korea, that guy is just insane. Like, he's tormenting his people. People are starving to death. Nobody could say anything. And I guess to a lesser degree in China, nobody likes the Communist Party. People want democracy, but the last time they voiced their opinion, the Tiananmen massacre happened. So yeah, crazy people back then, it's harder to hide that you're crazy because you get to do whatever you want. The rulers, the emperors, the kings, they get to do whatever they want. But nowadays, world leaders, they got PR people. So even though they might be crazy, they get to hide it better. Anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching this video. I'll see you later.